Edward Langston was sure that life could give him nothing more. He had become a millionaire, achieved success, and was ready to throw the most lavish wedding. But when he invited his ex to see her suffer, he didn't expect her to show up with his children triplets. What happens next? Don't forget to subscribe and share the video with your friends. Where are you watching us? Write in the comments. The art gallery buzzed with quiet energy as Layla James adjusted the lighting around her latest painting. The piece was a bold explosion of colors, a testament to resilience and growth, themes she often explored in her work. This wasn't her first exhibition, but the stakes felt higher tonight. She hoped this show would be her stepping stone to wider recognition, a chance to break free from the financial struggles that constantly loomed over her. She glanced at the clock on the far wall, mentally calculating how much time she had before the doors opened. Her fingers absently smoothed the fabric of her simple black dress, a practical yet elegant choice for the evening. The gallery was modest, much like the rest of Layla's life, but she carried herself with a quiet confidence that commanded attention without demanding it. As the first guests began to trickle in, her attention was drawn to a man standing near the entrance. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that somehow managed to look casual on him. His eyes scanned the room with a mixture of curiosity and calculation, lingering briefly on each painting before moving on. Layla couldn't help but notice the energy he exuded, determination mixed with a hint of charm that felt almost practiced. "Excuse me," the man said, approaching her with a faint smile. "Are you the artist behind these?" Layla nodded, her usual composure intact despite the flutter of nerves his presence stirred. "I am. I'm Layla James." "And you are?" "Marcus Walker," he replied, extending a hand. "I'm, let's say, a fan of ambitious work. Your pieces caught my eye." Their handshake was firm, and Layla sensed an intensity in his gaze that both intrigued and unsettled her. "Thank you," she said cautiously, unsure of his motives, but unwilling to let her curiosity show. They spent the next hour circling the gallery together, discussing her art, his burgeoning tech startup, and their contrasting worldviews. Layla spoke passionately about finding beauty in life's imperfections, while Marcus countered with his vision of reshaping the world through innovation. Their perspectives clashed, yet neither could deny the magnetic pull between them. By the end of the night, Marcus had purchased one of her paintings, a vibrant piece titled Unbroken. It was a beginning neither of them had anticipated. Their relationship grew quickly from that night. Marcus was relentless in his pursuit of success, a trait that resonated with Layla's own determination to carve out a name for herself. He admired her independence and found solace in her grounded nature, a stark contrast to the cutthroat world of tech startups. Layla, in turn, was drawn to his unwavering drive and the way he spoke of a future filled with possibilities. But beneath their initial compatibility lay fundamental differences. Layla cherished quiet moments, long walks in the park, evenings spent painting while jazz records played softly in the background. Marcus, however, thrived in chaos. His days were consumed by meetings with investors and late nights refining business pitches. He often spoke of the grind as though it were a badge of honor, and Layla couldn't help but wonder how long she could keep up with his pace. The cracks began to show during their first year together. Marcus would cancel dinner plans at the last minute, citing work emergencies that Layla suspected weren't as urgent as he claimed. Their arguments were rare but explosive, often revolving around his workaholic tendencies and her desire for a more balanced life. "I'm building something, Layla," he snapped one evening after she confronted him about yet another missed date. Do you think success just falls into people's laps? This takes time, sacrifice. And what about us? She shot back, her voice trembling with frustration. Are we just another sacrifice on your path to greatness? Marcus didn't respond, his silence speaking volumes. For a time, Layla tried to adapt. She threw herself into her art, channeling her frustrations into her work. But the more she gave Marcus space, the more distant he seemed to grow. He no longer asked about her paintings or offered to help set up for her shows. When he was with her, his mind was elsewhere, always racing ahead to the next goal. Their breaking point came on a cold autumn night. Layla had prepared a special dinner to celebrate the sale of one of her most expensive pieces. She waited for hours, only to receive a text from Marcus. Something came up. Rain check? When he finally arrived at her apartment, his tie undone and his face flushed with the rush of another deal closed, she didn't even let him sit down. "This isn't working," she said, her voice calm but resolute. Marcus frowned. "Layla, come on, don't do this. I'm in the middle of something big right now. Things will settle down soon, I promise." "They never settle down with you, Marcus," she replied, her eyes filling with tears she refused to let fall. "I've been patient. I've supported you in every way I can, but I can't keep pouring myself into a relationship where I'm not even a priority." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, his jaw tightening. "I thought you understood me, Layla. I thought you believed in what I'm trying to do." "I do believe in you," she said softly, "but I can't keep losing myself in the process." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus finally nodded, his expression unreadable. "I guess this is goodbye then," he said, his voice low. He walked out without looking back, leaving Layla alone in the dimly lit room. Weeks later, Layla discovered she was pregnant. The news came as a shock, but it also filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since the breakup. She knew Marcus would never abandon his dreams to raise a family, so she made the decision to move forward on her own. Her days became a blur of doctor's appointments, part-time work, and preparations for the arrival of her children. The struggle was immense, but Layla faced it with the same quiet resilience that had carried her through so many other challenges in life. When the triplets, Jasmine, Caleb, and Noah, were born, Layla felt an overwhelming sense of love and completeness. They were her world now, and she vowed to give them the life they deserved, even if it meant putting her own dreams on hold. As the years passed, Layla seldom thought of Marcus. He became a distant memory, a chapter she had long since closed, but the echoes of their time together lingered in the faces of her children, each of whom carried a piece of him: Jasmine's sharp wit, Caleb's unyielding determination, Noah's quiet intensity. Little did she know that their paths were about to cross again in a way she could never have anticipated. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting soft patterns on the worn but cozy furniture in Layla James's living room. She stood at the kitchen counter, balancing a cup of coffee in one hand and a spatula in the other. The air smelled of pancakes and syrup, a Saturday morning ritual in the James household. "Mommy, Caleb's eating my strawberries." Jasmine's voice rang out from the table, where her two brothers sat with mischievous grins. "I'm not," Caleb protested, though the red juice staining his lips betrayed him. Layla turned and gave him a pointed look. "Caleb, your sister's plate is not a buffet. Finish your own food." "Yes, ma'am," he mumbled, shoving a forkful of pancakes into his mouth to avoid further questioning. Noah, the quietest of the three, giggled at his brother's mischief before turning back to his sketchbook. He had inherited Layla's love for art and spent most of his free time drawing elaborate pictures of superheroes and imaginary worlds. It was a chaotic but joyful scene, one that Layla had come to treasure. Raising 3 children on her own hadn't been easy, but moments like this reminded her that every struggle was worth it. After breakfast, as the kids dashed off to play, Layla began tidying up the kitchen. The hum of the dishwasher was almost soothing, a rare moment of quiet in her otherwise bustling life. She wiped her hands on a towel and moved to the small pile of mail on the counter. Bills, flyers, a postcard from an old friend. And then she saw it. A gilded envelope, its edges embossed with gold, stood out starkly against the mundane clutter. Her name was written in elegant script, the letters looping gracefully across the surface. Frowning, Layla tore it open and unfolded the thick cardstock inside. Marcus Walker and Amara Williams cordially invite you to celebrate their union. Layla's hands froze, her breath catching in her throat as the words blurred together. Marcus. She hadn't thought of him in years, hadn't allowed herself to, but now his name was staring back at her, gilded and bold, pulling her into a past she thought she'd left behind. She dropped the invitation onto the counter as though it had burned her. Why now, she thought, anger bubbling beneath her shock. Why would he send this to me? The answer came almost immediately. Power. This was Marcus's way of showing her what she'd missed out on, a way to flaunt his success and remind her that he had moved on. Layla's first instinct was to throw the invitation away, to erase the reminder of a man who had chosen ambition over love. But as her initial anger subsided, another thought crept in, a thought she couldn't ignore. Her children deserved to know the truth. Caleb, Jasmine, and Noah had begun asking questions about their father. Layla had always answered in vague terms, saying he was busy or far away. But they were growing older, and their curiosity was becoming harder to deflect. This could be their chance to meet him. That night, as she tucked the children into bed, Layla found herself staring at the invitation again. The date was 2 weeks away, leaving her just enough time to prepare. "Mommy?" Jasmine's voice broke through her thoughts. "Yes, sweetheart?" Layla asked, brushing a stray curl from her daughter's forehead. "Do we have a daddy?" Jasmine's question was soft, but it carried the weight of her growing awareness. Layla hesitated, her throat tightening. "You do, baby," she said finally, "and maybe you'll get to meet him soon." The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind. Layla worked tirelessly to prepare for the wedding, balancing her usual responsibilities with the emotional weight of what lay ahead. She chose an elegant navy blue dress for herself, simple yet striking, a reflection of her confidence and dignity. For the triplets, she picked matching outfits that complemented hers without drawing too much attention. She wanted them to feel special, but not overwhelmed by the grandeur she knew awaited them. As the day of the wedding approached, Layla sat her children down for a conversation. "We're going to a big party this weekend," she began, her tone calm but firm. "It's a special event, and you're going to meet someone very important." "Who, Mommy?" Caleb asked, his eyes lighting up with curiosity. "Your father," Layla said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within her. The triplets exchanged wide-eyed glances. "Our daddy?" Jasmine repeated, her voice filled with wonder. "Yes," Layla confirmed, "but I need you to remember something. This is his special day, so we have to be on our best behavior, okay?" They nodded solemnly, sensing the importance of her words. When the day finally arrived, Layla felt a mix of nerves and determination. The wedding venue was a sprawling estate just outside the city, its grand gates flanked by uniformed attendants. Luxury cars lined the driveway, and the sound of an orchestra drifted through the air. Layla parked her modest sedan at the far end of the lot, taking a deep breath before stepping out. She adjusted the children's outfits one last time, smoothing their hair and straightening their ties. "Are you ready?" she asked, kneeling to their level. "Yes, Mommy," they chorused, their voices filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. As they walked toward the entrance, Layla held their hands tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew the road ahead would be anything but easy, but she was ready to face it, ready to confront the man who had walked away and show him the life he had left behind. Inside the grand hall, the air was thick with opulence. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, and guests in designer gowns and tailored suits mingled against a backdrop of gilded decor. Layla felt the weight of 100 eyes as she stepped inside, her children flanking her like a small, curious army. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. "Who is she? Are those his kids?" The triplets, oblivious to the stares, marveled at the grandeur around them. Jasmine pointed at the glittering chandelier, her eyes wide with awe, while Caleb tugged at Layla's hand to ask about the towering floral arrangements. But Layla's attention was fixed on one person, Marcus Walker. He stood near the front of the room, his confident posture faltering as his eyes locked onto hers. For a moment, the noise of the room seemed to fade away, leaving only the weight of unspoken words between them. The triplets, sensing the shift in energy, looked up at their mother. "Mommy," Noah whispered, "is that him?" Layla nodded, her grip tightening on their hands. "Yes, baby, that's your daddy." The confrontation she had prepared for was finally here, and as Marcus began to move toward them, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the truth to unravel. The grand hall buzzed with muted conversations and the soft strains of classical music, but all of it seemed to fade into a dull hum as Marcus Walker's gaze locked onto Layla James and the 3 children by her side. For a moment, his carefully constructed world, the gleaming chandeliers, the designer-clad guest, the opulent hall, seemed to blur at the edges. All he could see was her, and them. The resemblance was undeniable. The sharp curve of Caleb's jaw so much like his own, Jasmine's piercing eyes, a reflection of his mother's. And Noah, with his quiet intensity, a mirror to the boy Marcus had once been. Marcus's fiancée, Amara Williams, stood by his side, a radiant smile frozen on her lips as she followed his gaze. Her confusion quickly turned to suspicion as the weight of the moment settled over her. "Marcus?" she whispered, her voice sharp but low. "Who is that woman? And those children?" He didn't answer, couldn't. His throat felt dry, his mind reeling as Layla began to walk toward him, her head held high, her movements deliberate and graceful. The crowd parted like water around her, their whispers growing louder with every step she took. The triplets clung to her hands, their wide eyes drinking in the scene around them. By the time she reached the center of the room, the music had faltered, the orchestra stumbling over their notes as even the musicians turned to watch. All eyes were on Layla and her children, the tension in the air palpable. Layla stopped a few feet away from Marcus, her expression calm but unyielding. She looked directly at him, ignoring the murmurs of the guests and the stunned expression on Amara's face. For a moment, there was silence. Then, in a voice steady and firm, she spoke. "Hello, Marcus. It's been a long time." The room seemed to hold its breath. Marcus, still frozen, finally found his voice, though it was hoarse and unsteady. "Layla, what are you doing here?" Her eyes flickered to the children beside her before returning to his. "I came because they deserve to know who you are," she said simply, "and you deserve to know them." Amara's composure shattered. "Marcus," she hissed, her voice low but furious, "what is she talking about? Who are these children?" Layla's gaze shifted to Amara, her expression calm but resolute. "I'm sorry to disrupt your day," she said, her tone polite but firm. "But this is a truth that can't be ignored any longer." Amara took a step back, her hands trembling as she processed Layla's words. The guests, sensing the gravity of the moment, whispered furiously among themselves. "His kids? Are they really his?" one voice murmured. "They look just like him," another said. Marcus finally shook himself free of his shock, though his movements were stiff and uncertain. He looked at Layla, his voice trembling with disbelief. This can't be real. Why didn't you tell me?" Layla's jaw tightened, but her tone remained measured. "Because you left, Marcus. You made it clear that your ambitions were more important than anything else, including us. By the time I found out I was pregnant, you were already gone." Her words cut through him like a blade, the weight of her accusation settling heavily on his chest. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. He turned his gaze to the children, who were watching him with a mix of curiosity and confusion. Caleb's small hand clung tightly to Layla's, while Jasmine and Noah clutched at her dress. "Mommy," Jasmine whispered, her voice barely audible. "Is he our daddy?" The question hung in the air, silencing the room once more. Marcus's chest tightened, his gaze flickering between Jasmine's hopeful eyes and Layla's guarded expression. He knelt slowly, his movements hesitant, and looked at the three small faces staring back at him. His voice faltered. I didn't know about you." The children didn't respond immediately, their expressions a mixture of wonder and uncertainty. Layla knelt beside them, her presence a steady anchor in the storm of emotions swirling around them. "These are your children, Marcus," she said softly, her voice carrying an undeniable conviction. "Jasmine, Caleb, and Noah." Marcus stared at them, his mind racing with memories of choices made and opportunities lost. The sharp pang of guilt hit him like a tidal wave, and for the first time in years he felt truly unmoored. Amara, still standing nearby, snapped. "You mean to tell me you have children, Marcus, and you didn't think to mention them?" Her voice rose, cutting through the tense atmosphere like a whip. "I didn't know," Marcus shot back, his frustration and guilt bleeding into his tone. "If I had—" He stopped, his words catching in his throat as he turned back to Layla and the children. "If I had known, things would have been different." Layla's eyes softened, though her resolve remained. "Maybe they would have," she said quietly, "but you didn't know because you weren't there. You chose a different path, Marcus, and I chose to raise them on my own." The honesty in her words struck him harder than any accusation could. He felt the weight of his own choices pressing down on him, the enormity of what he had missed. First steps, first words, birthdays, all of it gone. Amara's fury continued to simmer, but her voice had taken on a sharp, controlled edge. "I can't believe this," she spat. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone I know. How could you keep something like this from me?" Marcus turned to her, his expression stricken. "Amara, I didn't know. I swear." "I don't care," she snapped. "This was supposed to be our day, Marcus, our future. And now you've ruined everything." Her words hung in the air as she stormed past him, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The guests parted to let her pass, their whispers growing louder in her wake. Marcus turned back to Layla, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt, regret, and something she couldn't quite name. "Layla," he began, his voice trembling, I don't even know where to start." Layla rose to her feet, her expression calm but firm. "This isn't about starting over, Marcus," she said. "It's about them. They deserve to know you, and you deserve to know them. But that's a choice only you can make." The triplets clung to her as she turned to leave, their small hands reaching for hers as if sensing the tension in the room. Marcus watched them go, his heart heavy with the weight of all he had lost and all he still stood to gain. As the doors closed behind them, the world Marcus had so carefully built began to crumble. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure how to put it back together. The grand estate, once alive with laughter and celebration, now stood eerily quiet. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the manicured gardens where just hours ago guests had mingled, unaware of the storm brewing within. Marcus Walker sat alone in the now empty banquet hall, his head in his hands, the glittering chandeliers above him mocking the shattered image of his perfect day. Amara was gone. She had left in a fury, her parting words ringing in his ears. "You've ruined everything, Marcus. Everything." And perhaps she was right. The life he had so meticulously built, the reputation, the wealth, the status, felt meaningless now. The faces of Jasmine, Caleb, and Noah haunted him, their wide eyes filled with both curiosity and a question he couldn't answer. Why weren't you there? He had spent his life chasing success, believing that with enough money and power he could fill the void left by his childhood struggles. But now, in the silence of his ruined wedding day, he realized the cost of his ambition. It had left him isolated, hollow, and estranged from the one thing he could never buy: a family. Layla sat on the edge of her bed, her thoughts tangled as the events of the day replayed in her mind. The triplets were asleep, their small bodies curled up together on the hotel room bed. She had tucked them in after reading their favorite bedtime story, her voice steady despite the weight in her chest. She hadn't come to ruin Marcus's life, no matter how it might have looked. Her only goal had been to give her children the opportunity to know their father. But, seeing the shock and pain on his face, she wondered if she had made a mistake. As she ran a hand through her hair, the soft buzz of her phone broke the silence. She hesitated before picking it up, her heart sinking when she saw Marcus's name on the screen. "Hello," she said, her voice cautious. "Layla," he began, his voice thick with emotion. I don't even know where to start." "Then don't," she replied, her tone calm but firm. "Marcus, this isn't about us. It's about them. If you want to be part of their lives, you need to show up, not with promises or excuses, but with actions. That's all I care about." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Can I see them tomorrow? Please?" Layla's heart softened, though she remained guarded. "We'll be at the park near the hotel at 10 a.m. If you want to meet them, that's where we'll be." "Thank you," he said quietly. "I'll be there." The next morning, the park was alive with the sounds of children laughing and playing. Layla sat on a bench, watching as Jasmine tried to coax Caleb into joining her on the swings, while Noah quietly sketched the scene in his notebook. They seemed at ease, unaware of the weight of the moment about to unfold. Marcus arrived just before 10 a.m., dressed casually in a way that felt unfamiliar for someone so used to suits and tailored perfection. He spotted Layla immediately, her presence calm and steady even from a distance. Taking a deep breath, he approached. "Layla," he said softly, his eyes flicking to the children. "Thank you for giving me this chance." "This isn't for you," she replied, her voice gentle but firm. "It's for them." Marcus nodded, the truth of her words sinking in. He turned toward the triplets, who had paused their play to watch him with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. "Hi," he said, kneeling to their level. I'm Marcus, but you can call me Dad if you want." The words felt foreign in his mouth, but he meant them. Jasmine tilted her head, studying him with an intensity far beyond her 5 years. "Why didn't you come before?" she asked, her voice innocent but piercing. Marcus swallowed hard, struggling to find the right words. "I didn't know about you," he admitted, "and I'm so sorry for that. If I had known, I would have been here. But now that I do know, I want to be here. For all of you." Caleb crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "You can't just show up and be our dad." Layla felt a pang of pride at her son's boldness, but stayed silent, letting Marcus handle the question. "You're right," Marcus said, his voice steady. "I have to earn that, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes to prove it to you." The children exchanged glances, their expressions softening but still cautious. Jasmine was the first to step forward, her small hand reaching out to touch his. "Okay," she said simply. Marcus felt his chest tighten, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. He nodded, his hand trembling slightly as he held hers. "Okay." The weeks that followed were filled with tentative steps forward. Marcus returned to the city, delegating much of his work to trusted colleagues so he could focus on building a relationship with his children. It wasn't easy. There were moments of awkwardness, moments when he doubted whether he could ever make up for the time he had lost. But he kept showing up. He attended their school events, cheering them on at soccer games and art shows. He learned their favorite bedtime stories and read to them until they fell asleep. He let Noah teach him how to draw, even when his sketches turned out comically bad, and played catch with Caleb in the park until his arms ached. Slowly, the walls began to come down. The triplets warmed to him, their laughter becoming more frequent, their hugs more natural. Layla watched from a distance, her skepticism gradually giving way to cautious optimism. Marcus was changing, and for the first time in years, she began to believe it was real. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Marcus stayed behind to help Layla clean up. As they worked side by side in the small kitchen, he turned to her, his expression earnest. "Thank you," he said softly, "for giving me this chance, for believing in me, even after everything." Layla paused, her hands resting on the counter. "I didn't do it for you," she replied, echoing her earlier words. "I did it for them, but I can see you're trying, and that matters." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the past lingering between them. But in that silence, there was also hope, a fragile but growing belief that they could build something better for the future. Years later, at a family gathering in Layla's home, Marcus found himself surrounded by the sound of laughter and the warmth of belonging. Jasmine was helping Layla in the kitchen, her chatter filling the air. Caleb and Noah were outside, playing catch with their cousins. Marcus watched it all, a quiet smile on his face. For the first time in his life, he felt truly rich. Not because of his money or his status, but because of the love and connection he had found. And as he stood in the middle of that bustling, joyful home, he knew he would never take it for granted again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more. Share this video with your friends and let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't miss out. Check out our other videos for more captivating tales. See you in the next one.